So hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar. And thank you very much for joining us today. I'm excited to present you to our speakers today, Adys Dávila, Marcos Gobbi, and Gerardo Ruiz. Today's session aims to plan and craft your nearshoring strategy. So the Nearshore company and Prima have been partners for more than a year now. So let me share with you a little bit more about our companies and speakers. First, from TNC, we have Adys Dávila. And the TNC, the Nearshore company, helps manufacturers of all sizes transfer their manufacturing operations into Mexico through traditional and customized nearshoring arrangements. Adys, who joins us today, is the business development lead in Mexico for the Shelter program, and is also responsible for the relationship with government and foreign direct investment promotion institutions and chambers. She has had the opportunity to work on more than 300 projects for manufacturing companies seeking to relocate or grow in Mexico in a variety of sectors. Adys has 17 years or more of professional experience with a focus on attracting foreign manufacturing investment to Mexico. She has a major from international business from Tec de Monterrey and a master's degree from Universidad Iberoamericana. From Prima, we have Marcos and Gerardo. And Prima is a Mexico-based integrated manufacturing and supply chain partner. Prima manufactures customized products, operates complex industrial projects, and simplifies sourcing from Mexico. Marcos is our fulfillment and supply chain lead at Prima. He previously worked at Uber for 5 years, based in Argentina, Mexico, and San Francisco. From the operations and product side, Marcos has dealt with new multi-billion tech products that were trying to disrupt their existing market and add value to traditional business offerings. On the other side, Gerardo is a strategic sourcing manager at Prima with more than 20 years of experience working in the Mexican and American automotive industry, oriented to exceed the company's KPIs. Gerardo is a Lean Six Sigma expert implementing projects with average financial benefits that had exceeded $1 million per year as a master black belt. So thank you very much all for joining us today. We're excited to hear your thoughts and conversations. I'll kick it over now to all you three.
All right. Thanks, Sebas. Hi, Adys, Jerry. I'm very excited to have you two on this webinar today. I think you're very seasoned professionals on all that relates to nearshoring and manufacturing in North America in general. And today's topic is strategic planning for nearshoring. I think we all know by now nearshoring is a thing. We all know the stats. We all know that Mexico surpassed China as a main U.S. importer. 2023 being also a record year for Mexico in its foreign direct investments. So I think now today our webinar is more focused on the strategic planning for nearshoring, right? So okay, I want to move my operations to Mexico. It's not that easy, right? Mexico is huge. In fact, a fun fact, you can fit 23 European countries in Mexico, right? So it all starts with 3 very important pillars of the nearshoring strategy. And the first of those being site selection criteria, right? So Mexico, a huge country, huge economy, a very versatile country. So if you want to move your operations or part of your operations to Mexico, what do you start with? So Adys has a very long career trajectory dealing with exactly this type of discussions with lots of American clients. So Adys, tell us about a bit about site selection criteria. What are some of the variables that as an American or North American company you have to consider when starting to look at Mexico as part of your supply chain?
Thank you, Marcos. First of all, thank you for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here with you. And I'm very excited to be able to contribute with some of the experience that I had in the past years with companies coming into Mexico. I can tell you that's a tough question. As you know, we have a lot of nearshoring coming into Mexico. There's different factors, different elements. But I think before answering specifically the list of elements these companies consider, I will say that the first question I always ask is why are these companies coming into Mexico? Because it'll determine basically the process, whether they are evaluating Mexico or comparing versus other countries, or if they already decided to be in Mexico for a specific reason and then comparing between regions. So as you can see, there's different levels and stages, and sometimes the decisions are not as easy as let's compare Monterrey and Saltillo, or Central Mexico and North Mexico. They are more complex going in terms of analyzing costs, projecting productivity for the next 10 years, considering the stability that certain region will guarantee for this investment. Because there's not only the need of transferring the operations, but as you know, companies transfer equipment, they make a lot of investment in the buildings, in the locations, in training, in developing and deploying their personnel. So I think after that is solved, why are you coming into Mexico and what is the stage you are currently experiencing in that evaluation process? The next question for me will be, what is most important for you to consider? There's a list of different elements. They could range from logistics, labor availability, infrastructure, quality of life, even availability of graduated engineers. So the list is long. I actually prepared here a slide. I don't know if we have it here, that you can please help me to show it. But thank you very much. That is basically what I was referring on the why. And if you can advance to the other slide, you can see the list of the elements and how these elements interact in the different stages. So on the upper side of this slide, you can see from left to right, the development of the site selection process. If there is a decision, whether the decision makers, the CFO, CEOs of the company are considering a preliminary information of Mexico, like how much we're going to have to invest, how much the labor is currently costing for a fully burdened hour of direct labor in Mexico, that is what we consider preliminary information. But if you advance towards a more finalized decision, if they have already selected a region, like a micro region, they're going to say, like, we need to be between Monterrey and Saltillo. That's an example that I was using. You can see here the list is more complex, and then you have to evaluate more into detail things as logistics costs, infrastructure, availability of industrial buildings, not only spaces in industrial parks, but on the micro selection of the region, you need to understand the dynamics of that specific industrial park, as an example. So I don't know if this helps to answer.
Yeah, I think this is great. Also, I think Adys, logistics is it's a huge thing for companies that are trying to establish in Mexico, right? I think we're all seeing in the last only in the last couple of years, with not only COVID but the Suez Canal blockage, the Russian-Ukraine logistics disruption, piracy just a few months ago, right? And the freight cost of moving a container from Asia to North America is going up and down, right? And Mexico is multi-versatile in that scenario. You can move stuff by air, by sea, by truck, by railway. How do you think about, when assessing, when advising clients, how do you recommend in terms of where to position in Mexico? Is there are they looking for specific logistic capabilities? Tell us a little about that, please.
Of course, as you mentioned, logistics is determining nowadays, but there's also the combination of other elements, as we were saying. So where to locate is very important. There's different regions across Mexico, different clusters. We have been helping companies for over 40 years in the Maquila program, For automotive, aerospace, we have electronics, medical, IT clusters. So I think the process of understanding costs and proximity, even to client or to suppliers or to the labor or to a specific raw material, that is very important to be able to do that in the previous stages during the site selection process. As you mentioned, there's advantages of being located at the border, but there's also some advantages depending on your business model, on who you're going to deliver your goods or who is going to deliver the raw material at your plant. And for instance, it can be beneficial for your company to be located in Querétaro or maybe in Juárez at the other side of the country.
Yeah, I think they made a great point. We're seeing a lot of companies establish operations not necessarily on the border with the U.S., right? Which might be the first apparent solution, but there's things like regulations and tax exceptions that vary by state, right? And Jerry, I would like to touch base with you. You have a very complete career, not only working as an engineer in Mexico, but you've spent some time in Detroit and other areas in the U.S. So what are you seeing in Mexico? I think one of the big misconceptions is the skill, right? The qualified labor. And I think aerospace is just the tip of the iceberg of very complex and quality stringent industries that are starting to settle in Mexico and see more and more competition. In your experience, what are we good here in Mexico? What processes or type of products you're seeing lately that previously were maybe unthinkable to be manufactured here?
Sure. Hello, everybody. For example, as you were saying, the automotive industry is very, very specific requirements, and it's let's say, the more value added that you have in the product, the more competitive that we are in Mexico. So, for example, if you compare only like still the raw material, we are not that competitive with Asia. But if we start adding value to the product, for example, welding is one example of a real value added that main corporate are looking for to explore in Mexico. Uh, Big names of corporate offices look for welding in Monterrey area, for example. I was speaking with a shop here, local shop, and it's amazing that the labor is very let's say it's available here in the local neighborhood. There are several people that were trained by, for example, Caterpillar, John Deere. They used to work there. They don't work there anymore. They are uh, looking for an opportunity, and they can join the small shops, and those certifications that they had in the past still valid. Only renew the certificate, but they have the skills. They know how to weld the big assemblies, the big infrastructure for heavy fabrication, for example, and they are ready to start being productive for those locations in Mexico.
Thanks, Jerry. Yeah, I think it's important as a company that's thinking about manufacturing in Mexico, to partner with someone that advises you transparently, right? And there's some products that are impossible to beat price or the rate of production in Asia. But as Jerry was saying, value added means Mexico poses itself as a stronger alternative, right? So I think I was just thinking. You made a really good point in Prima, and I'm sure Adys too, in the Nearshoring company, we come across day after day with manufacturing companies who are owned by professionals that have spent a significant amount of time working in the U.S. Right? I think one of the things that people don't realize is U.S. and Mexico have constant flow of not only products or money, but also of people and professionals coming in and out of both countries. And that makes a very fluid flow of knowledge and practices. Jerry's a great example. Jerry is Mexican. He's been working in Mexico for a long time, but he's also spent some time of his career in the US. And you come across that every day. So yeah, site selection, I think, is a key pillar when you're thinking about starting to lay or lean on Mexico as a production partner. But also, once you decide, okay, I'm going to establish in this or other city, then you have, it's not only a matter of putting your factory to work, but also there's a whole supply chain that you start to be dependent on, not only logistic partners, but also suppliers of raw material and employees and so on. It's a whole world, right? And so one of the things that we get asked a lot is, how do you integrate your operations without disrupting your existing supply chain, right? Being in Asia or in the US or Canada or whatever country. So in your experience, Adys and Jerry, how do clients do this, right? You have a supply chain existing for a lot of years, and you're starting to have a second maybe or third plant in some other country. How do you merge these two chains on your day-to-day?
I'm gonna go first, if you don't mind, Jerry.
Yes.
I think for me, it's basically, as I explained, integrating this evaluation of supply chain in the previous stages, right when they know they're coming into Mexico, or even before. We know currently with the nearshoring trends, developing the supply chain in Mexico is taking us about 12 months from the point where you get to know a product, get to go on the quotation, and then develop and test and do quality and audits, inspections, and then the final product. So I think we need to consider this. Of course, we are getting better. There's companies like Prima helping to shorten that process with their experience and the access to really good suppliers, qualified business with good quality practices. So I think it's very important to do that in a previous stage. And as Jerry mentioned, to get together with the people or the companies that might help you to shorten that process.
Also, in my experience, for example, if you complement that part with some, for example, engineering, some quality control stages, for example, quality tools, in the automotive industry is more like the PIP-up process to be documented like they do in the all the automotive industry. Even if your product is not for that end market, if you add those validations, you have a very, very solid quality system. For example, we have a customer from Europe that is doing nearshoring these days with a project, and they left open the approval, the quality approval for this MPI, and we decided to go with the people approval process, all the PQP, and we did more than that was requested, but anyway, it was a good experience for them. Like, well, we treat the project as it was an automotive. It's for warehouses, but at the end, those tools are very, very helpful to continue developing the supply chain, not only the logistics and material, but also the production, the engineering, the quality control. So that's value added for the company that are looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Adi, to make great points, and I think it's in fact a matter of planning it with time, right? And in that sense, Mexico, I think, provides. It's so easy to travel from the U.S. to Mexico, Mexico to U.S., right? And not only time zone, but also language, and it's such a short trip that it's almost not an investment to go and visit if your potential supply chain and try to establish relationships, as Adys is saying, right from the onset. And I think it's all about that, right? Building strong relationships with the local suppliers or logistic partners or custom brokers. Um, and it's such a nearshoring, such a hot topic, right? Adys, that everyone's looking, and the demand is insatiable. I think you come up with more and more companies that are starting to work with American customers. And so, what are some of the challenges that you see Adys in establishing that supply chain? Not only finding the one who's gonna manufacture your product if you're not going to do it yourself, but all the other satellite suppliers. Where do you see people get stuck on?
I think it's basically we are crowded. The companies receive a lot of requests for quotations. At the same time, we need to be growing, expanding, having new businesses, new clients coming. So I think it's understanding that there's going to be some lead times, some answer times, and as you have the efficiency inside your house to do the process, a lot of clarity on the stages. I have seen processes for global companies that they actually sell billions of dollars. And the thing is, even though they have a supplier development process established, they cannot reply that currently in the nearshoring situation in Mexico. They have to adapt and be flexible and understand there's going to be certain steps of that process that will take a little more time. That doesn't mean we are not efficient in Mexico. That's the opposite. We are getting more and more responsive to these nurturing trends and needs. I think maybe 2 years ago, every supplier will say yes, but I think more clearly now they are more educated on saying, I can do this up to here. From here to here, I will need additional investment or additional resources, or I can only get into this specific sector of the industry. So I think it's about planning, but understanding that also you need to tropicalize to adjust your supply development process.
That's great. Yeah, and I think that's a great segue. I was just thinking that one of the things of having an efficient and fast and reliable supply chain is clear communication, right? With all the players that are working to get your product to you on time and with the quality you require. And I think that's one of the things that we try to really emphasize on and partner with companies that are provide us information on demand. Now, being documentation, templates, evidence, or analysis. So I think Jerry, you have great experience working with both Canadian or American companies which are already manufacturing in Mexico. How does that flow of information happen, right? And thinking that it's so expensive to ship something that it's not up to standard, so you need to make sure. And maybe without a visit from the customer, that what you're producing is going to be according to the requirements. So how do you work with the factory owners? How do you work with, especially with technology, to provide evidence of manufacturing?
Sure. The industry have changed a lot in the last years, of course. When I started, it was not that easy to share the information, the product status, the product development, the MPI status of the project. Nowadays, it's incredible. You have only you take the video, the next minute it's with them, and they approve most of the time over the video, just making sure that the critical characteristics are there. For example, we can evaluate now, for example, finishes, plating, powder coat, eco, with the devices today are very precise. So now with all the information shared in a minute, we can do all that transactions and approvals and progress in a couple of minutes. I mean, it's not like in the past. I used to do that, the travel from Monterey to Detroit, for example, to to, to approve some appearance of the part. Now with the video and the technology, as you say, is pretty easy. Now we have of course, more high definitions on the video. It's easy. Actually, sometimes you do it in the actual plant. It's easier to take a picture or a video, and then you go to the office and zoom that part backwards, and we used to do it like 20 years ago. So it's pretty easy today to have progress on that matter.
Yeah, that speeds up a lot of cycles, I think. I once heard a phrase that I loved, which is the best supplier is the one you can forget about, right? You know it's going to provide in time and in full, and you don't have to barely talk to them. I think technology enables a lot of that, right? Like especially artificial intelligence, we're starting to see a lot of technology around that to assess from weldings to drawings to final quality inspections. But this leads me to our third topic, which you can select your site correctly. You can do all the theory, bulletproof theory, and you can establish good relationships with all your supply chain stakeholders. But then there's other risks, right? I think nearshoring mitigates the biggest risk of them all, which is only relying on one plant or one geography. But apart from, okay, you diversified your production sites and you diversify your geopolitical risks or macroeconomical risk. But now there's a lot of risks that we need to still contemplate on the day-to-day of our operations, right? And there's some I don't want to go around all the risks that people, legitimately start to think about when think about Mexico. And one of those is electricity, right? Like energy to set up a reliable production plant. So, Adys, what questions come to you regarding energy in Mexico and supply of it, and what's your answer?
Yeah, I think that's very important, Marcos, also to consider. I think in the previous years, the question was the cost of the KVA, and the electricity supply was not even a challenge. Of course, you will assume if you're going to be in an industrial park or industrial region, you will have access to KVAs. But I think after pandemics and the last 2 years, we have been struggling with certain regions going low or scarce on KVAs availability. That is a combination between what was happening in the market, energy reforms in Mexico, all the permits, and the interaction of the government to allow this to expedite these processes and permits. So I think it's very important for the companies to know that right from the beginning, if they select a location, they need to evaluate and consider the availability of the KPIs, not only in terms of the demand or the power factor, but also to know the substation, the infrastructure that the parks are going to offer in the surrounding areas, and also if that is going to help them to grow for the next 10 years. We have regions that are more challenged, that received more challenges with this electricity demand. And that is an example of the Querétaro region. They received a combination of a lot of industry, but also a lot of web services in IT centers, in call centers, in data centers. So basically this second category took a lot of the available demand, and that led to the industry and to the chambers organizations to organize and do something else, because there was projects that were standing for a couple of months without any electricity available to start their production. So that's one of the major challenges we are facing with electricity.
Yeah, I think you're right on the blank. I think the Bahia region is blowing up, right? The other day, we took a flight from Querétaro to Monterrey, and the whole plane, people with branded shirts, even with hard hats or boots on them, and I can't tell you how many deals we received by talking to people on check-in lines on the airports. It's crazy. You can really breathe the industry in these sites. And what other risks, Adys, have you seen? Especially around supply chain. Can you think of any that customers are trying to mitigate actively when thinking about Mexico?
I think another challenge has been another important challenge that can delay the process of manufacturing in Mexico, not putting it in risk, but more like delaying. The initial phase will be the availability of industrial spaces. There's regions that in Mexico got to the point where the availability was below 1%. That is the case of Monterrey area, metropolitan area. And that is the current situation of Saltillo. Now we have like 97% availability of industrial spaces. And Monterrey currently leverage that disadvantage. And now they have about 3% when they were at 1%. There's other regions in the north as Matamoros where we operate, where there's going to be maybe a 3% availability. The pool is not very large, but there's available buildings above 150,000 square feet in that city. And of course, it's more challenging if you need a location like Juarez, where the spaces, or Tijuana, are going to be up to $1 per square feet, and the availability is going to be very scarce, below 1%. So that's also one of the challenges to consider in early stages, to get the correct information, to start understanding the process of negotiating the industrial spaces, because as they are available and you get a proposal, that doesn't mean you're going to get it. At the end, you're going to have to negotiate a lot of items and details with the landlords. And as we were saying, electricity, they have to invest in one of the projects heavily in infrastructure, they're going to go for the one that doesn't require that large investment. So it's a comparison. Like if you need air conditioning, they're going to evaluate the project that doesn't need it, because they're going to have to invest for the next 10 years. And then your agreement will have to be for 10 years, not for 5. So that's very important also to consider.
Perfect. And to wrap up, Jerry, once you start producing, what risks is important to mitigate once you start producing in Mexico?
What the strategy that we did in the past is, for example, to have redundancy. We have a couple of suppliers that can do the same operation. For example, if you are gonna do laser cut and press bending, uh, you have those capabilities in one company, one supplier, and same copy in the other. You have, for example, when there's tooling in the project, it's more difficult, but you need to have plan B ready. If something happens, you can move tooling. We have done that in the past. Can be related to capacity, labor, skills, but at the end, if you do redundancy, it's gonna be a almost successful project 100% of the time. If you put all the product in one basket only, probably you're gonna struggle with something. It can vary, but if you have a plan B ready, most of the time you're gonna be successful in the project.
Awesome.
Well, thank you very much, Gerardo, Marcos, Adys. We have certain questions here going on in the chat. So the first one from Robert: how has the tide shifted in nearshoring in the last few years, and what do you expect to happen in the near future with so many changes coming to North America?
Wants to take this one? I'll volunteer you, Adys.
I think I can elaborate on that. Thank you. Yes. I think the changes will have to be gradual. There's going to be collaboration between government, universities, and companies to develop a lot of the required talent of, to supply the correct labor to the companies. That is changing, as we already have a skill base in Mexico experience. We have been helping companies to manufacture for a lot of years in companies in Europe, in the US, in different countries. I think we still need to put attention into this topic that is going to be the talent retention and the talent preparation for the next years. And on a different perspective, I think there's going to be more collaboration on the strategic sectors the government supports in terms of incentives, in terms of promotion, in terms of efficiency of the laws and regulations. We know there have been different changes like in tariffs and audits for getting your temporary import permits and the process of getting your certifications. But I think that has to become more efficient to give the access to the companies to do this online more efficiently in a certain and defined period of time. So I think that's towards what we are facing with more nearshoring coming into Mexico.
Awesome, and it's a developing news, right? Like every day you open the newspaper, especially with 2 elections coming up. So it's very dynamic. I think whatever answer we give today, tomorrow will change. But for sure, there's a shift towards more North American centered production, right?
Thank you very much for that, Adys. And I guess here the last question, for the sake of time, is from Rachel. What types of processes or products do you think Mexico is best positioned to manufacture?
Yeah, I can answer that. I think Jerry briefly touched upon it during the webinar, but I think whatever is not just raw materials, right, or slightly modified raw materials, Mexico increases its advantage. As we're saying, skilled labor in Mexico is abundant. There's a lot of educational institutions that partner with companies to develop engineers in specific supply constrained areas or products or processes. So that makes a dynamic in which value added in Mexico makes a lot of sense for companies, right? As we were saying, going from automotive to aerospace, there's a whole spectrum, and we're seeing clients start to contact us, and I'm sure Adys too, on every single space. So I would say, when there's more and more technology and more knowledge onto your product, then definitely think of Mexico because I'm sure it'll make sense.
Thank you very much for that, Marcos, and thank you all for joining. Thank you, Gerardo, Adys. Thank you very much for today, and thank you all for joining. Let's talk more about your nearshoring needs. So please send us an email at info@prima.ai or partners@thenearshorecompany.com, and we can get into the details further down the road. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. A pleasure.
Thank you.